We got on time. Stress of the job got to him.
Good afternoon, welcome. This is the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, March 15th. Okay. The first item that's marked on the agenda is under the consent agenda, item C1. Are there any items prior to that item that any council members have questions on or would like to discuss? Okay, C1.
Good afternoon. So I hope I explained this in the memo right. Our comm center manager's pay has not been competitive with what her responsibilities are. So if you remember here, the last month and a half, 2 months, we used to have the comm center was under that board of directors and it was kind of defunct. And so we brought them back underneath the police department's kind of umbrella. The comm center manager is essentially now we've got a lieutenant that's here. She's the frontline supervisor down there. We raised the sergeant's pay because of the pay compression issue 3 months ago. It's going to happen April 1st is when that takes effect. From an internal equity perspective, I didn't think it was right not to have her at that same level and put her into that same category with them. It's a jump the first year. It's going to be about $8,000 is what the pay raise is going to be for her. But to get that level set, that's kind of where we need to be with it. She's been doing the budget, the separate comm center budget. She's got 9 direct reports. She's got almost $1 million budget down there. She's the subject matter expert on the equipment, the NCIC stuff, all the audit stuff that we go through, and it needs to be compensated for that. That's why I put this in.
Okay, questions for Chief on that?
Thank you.
Okay. Item D1 is next.
Mayor and Council.
Hi.
So this is a landscaping project that Trees Forever had approached us about. And it's the addition of a bioswale and quite a bit of native plantings, both vegetative and trees. And so this really falls in line with landscaping that we have been doing in Marion Parks, based around native plantings and not really any ornamentals. So the area that you see outlined in orange, that would be the area that would encroach on the city property. And we ask for your approval.
Questions?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. No additional items are marked on the regular consent agenda. Any questions on anything?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Under engineering E3. So I was reading that. And while I was reading it, just looking at all the changes they're making and all the different calculations for how many square footage for this and that and all the changes and the project going up $54,000 made me question, so is it still the low bid? Since it went up $54,000 and why are they making all these changes after the original bids? Did they have bad information on how much concrete they're gonna have to take out or how much concrete they're gonna have to add or how much sidewalk was gonna have to go and all that stuff?
Right. So the reason for the change, first of all, is with the school district's bond issuance being passed. So we had a set of plans that was approved. We bid the project and then they wanted things like the bus pull off. So we're doing things for the school district as part of the project. So we've negotiated all these prices. So it's still considered the low bid. That was the low bid at the time of the contract. Anytime we do change orders, we're changing that low bid contract. So where we can, we change them at unit prices where it's not fair to necessarily add them at unit prices, but that's the whole reason of the changes. And I believe it was at the previous council meeting that we had the MOA agreement between the school district and the city so that the school district reimburses us for the improvements that we're doing for their behalf.
So these improvements or these changes are all based off of the school.
Correct.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense because I'm reading it thinking, how did they not have all this information when they did the bid? And it didn't, at least I didn't see anything in there talking about the school.
Yeah, so if you look at the actual change order, the first paragraph in it says, in order to coordinate the proposed site changes to be made as part of the Francis Marion Intermediate School addition renovation, several changes to Third Avenue reconstruction project are required, and then goes through the list of the items.
So I
So
should read the first
it's-
paragraph instead of just reading what the changes are. Okay.
But that way
makes
the public knows what's going on too. I mean, it's when it's one paragraph in there, but that's what it's for.
Great. That answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions on the remainder of the consent agenda? Okay, we'll move on to the regular agenda. Items A1 through A4 are not marked. Any questions on those? A5,
Yes, Your Honor, on council. So this will be the public hearing on Thursday for the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget. So on Thursday, there will be a general overview presentation of the budget. So tonight, we would like to just highlight some of the changes from the work session until into this proposed final budget. So some of the main changes that we just wanted to highlight was the non-bargaining wage increase that was adjusted from 3% to 3.5%. Initially, we had 3 in there, and then under the direction of council at the work session, we did increase that to 3.5%. Then there was an expenditure line item that was not included for Lynch Dallas under the legal line, so we did add that. Some other changes, it was pointed out that there was that one of the line items or two of the line items under the workers' comp was low, and we had noticed that there was an adjustment there that road use had more allocation, so we fixed that. Our debt service fund, we got some firmer numbers for our issuance, our series 2022A issuance. So that did have a slight correction to the debt service levy. For our proprietary funds, initially, we did not have a revenue estimate in there. There is a rate analysis underway for sewer on solid waste. So we did increase those revenues to reflect a projection of what those revenues would be, but there is a rate analysis still underway for those. We did remove the sanitary sewer fleet replacement from this current from the fiscal year 23 budget. And then under the health insurance fund, we did budget for a contingency in case of our costs that we see this year are ever increasing. So we did budget for a contingency there. So that does take the levy in the budget during the work session. The levy was at 14.34832, and that does now that with the adjustments, it takes it down to 14.20203. So we also just wanted to highlight, we had an actions kind of to-do list that came out of the work session just to kind of show our progress moving forward. And so just to highlight some of the things that we've been working on that are in conjunction with the budget, a lot of these things are just happening right now. So to formalize the list for the comparable cities, it's on the agenda tonight. The next three items here are all to do with our modeling, which will give the city a chance to kind of project into the future and kind of react rather than being be proactive rather than be reactive, and we can implement these modeling tools. There's a item for discussion on tonight's agenda that you'll see that we're hoping to move forward with that. And then the hotel motel policy to update, that's the next item on the agenda. So you can see that we've been working on these to-dos and there's more to come. Is there any questions around the changes in the budget?
Questions? Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, Brian, go back one slide. So maybe it's that slide or the other slide. So some of the items you pointed out on this slide for the workers' comp, go back one more slide, Terrell. And it seems like some of the items you're pointing out all would increase the levy, not decrease it. So I'm looking for something up there that resulted in a decrease in the levy because the wages obviously will increase it as well as the expenditures for Lynch Dallas.
Yeah.
So what else offsets those and then further decreases it?
So that was the for the special benefits levy. So that's not a bullet on here, but that was a special benefits that we found that we had discovered that we could not levy for certain benefits that we were levying for in the past. So that was a reduction in the levy for the special benefits levy.
Right.
So that was so you'll see if you so the changes, it actually ended up being 320,000 deduction to the general fund revenue because of the special benefits levy. So that's the main impact.
The main one.
That's the main one from the 1434 to the 1420.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Any other? Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah. Terrell, if we can go back to that slide you were just on, thank you. Brian, so I think you said that we have both sanitary sewer and solid waste rate studies that are underway. And I'm certainly a little bit closer to the one on sanitary sewer, just based on discussions that I've had with Brian. I guess the question is, when do we project those rate studies to be concluded? And then how do we accommodate those findings into our go forward budget?
I mean, Ryan, do you want to take this one?
Yes, Grant. And so our goal is to meet with the council subcommittee at the next meeting. I believe it's the end of March. We'll have a very good detailed picture on what the sanitary sewer rates and revenues are going to be for this next fiscal year. Same thing with solid waste. We had a couple small adjustments we made for solid waste. Nothing that major. It's just we're trying to plan ahead for the future. So I believe the solid waste one is ready. With the current public services facility, what the scope of that's looking like, we needed to pin down how much revenue we needed to plan for in the next fiscal year. So we're pretty comfortable where we're at right now. And so I think Ryan's intent is to meet with the council subcommittee, and then you'll have that information.
Okay, good, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. Next is A7.
Yes, so So this on Thursday would be a resolution amending the hotel motel grant program. So at the last council meeting, I gave a presentation on a process to simplify. So some things that we had highlighted that would streamline the process for the hotel motel grant program. So here highlights the key changes from the existing policy to the new policy. And the main change would be that our old way, I'll say, or our existing way was that we had two categories that we allocated funding to through the hotel motel grant program. And those were allocated within a range. So it used to be 25% to 50% for local government. And then it used to be 50% to 75% for nonprofits. So under the new policy, we would allocate the local government portion with our city events and commissions and partners during the regular budget process. And then there would be a budgeted amount solely for the grant program, which would be open exclusively to nonprofit organizations. Another couple of changes was that we clarified and wanted to spell out in the policy with the direction that we got from council, more of what the makeup of the committee would look like. So we did add the wording there that it would consist of 2 staff, 1 city council member, and a maximum of 4 council appointed citizens. And then the final change, which I'm not sure, I don't think I discussed at the council meeting, but I found out with my research that also my wife, who's she runs a trust organization, and she deals with grant applications all the time. And she said, you need to have character limits in there. So I'm sure that the committee would welcome a change that we put character limits on the questions so the packets are readable, they're more concise, that people don't go on for 5 pages. So that was something that I felt would be a benefit to all. So next slide. So just to highlight some of the key points around this, I just wanted to point out that the fiscal year 23 grant program budget would be $175,000. That has been the same as it has been, that has been the same as the past 2 fiscal years. But I did want to point out that this now it would be exclusively available for nonprofits. So it's actually an increase to what would be available for those organizations. And under the direction of council, the grant program would remain an annual program. Was there any questions around those changes?
Brian, I just wanted to say thank you for all your work on that. I've sat on that committee as counsel and just as a private citizen for probably the last 7 years. And I would welcome these changes. It's great to see that we're going to give the nonprofit organizations a little bit more cut of the chunk, and obviously bring in those partnership programs that the city's hosting, along with those partnerships to have a fiscal line or a line in the fiscal budget. So I would welcome these changes. These are great changes, and this is a great program. There's a lot of opportunities for these nonprofit organizations to continue down their path by allowing them to have a little bit more of that hotel motel revenue. So I just want to say thank you. Will be welcoming that change, and thanks for all your hard work on that, Brian. That's a great committee.
Yeah, thank you.
Sarah?
And real quick, echoing that, thank you. Having done some of these in the past, not this particular program, appreciate the ease and simplicity and the transparency. Next step as we get through it again, I would not object if the solution came up at some point on some of the return or applying again, folks, to have an option like, did you receive funding in the past? If so, jump to this section or something. So avoiding some of the consistent, I mean, I know you can cut and paste and pop it in there, but if there are some that have received it in the past and they don't want to fill out some of the background that we already know. So you're just again, repeating the same event that we've seen in the past, saving them. Not opposed if that would become part of the application, but it's not critical either way.
Go ahead.
Can you go back one slide, Joe? So with the new policy, city events and partners would be allocated during budget. So is that still going to be that 25 to 50% of the pot, or is that going to be, how's that dollar amount going to be determined?
It would probably still be in that range. Yes, there's just not a defined range now. So we'd like council to have the flexibility during that budget season if they did choose to allocate more funding, less funding. And then that would be used in conjunction with what council's direction was during budget to set the amount for the nonprofit.
Okay. And then as far as the committee, is the committee fully staffed right now?
So currently we have three citizens on the committee, and I will be reaching out to them after if this is approved, or as either way, the existing policy would be in place if it's not approved. So we would move forward. The first Monday in April is when we start, is when we open. So I'll be reaching out to them next week. Hopefully they all will still want to serve. So I will have, and then I just need to find one more.
Sure. And that was
So
kind of my question, is it fully staffed and will those people be asked to continue on?
so I'm hoping in April that there will be an agenda item approving the 4 appointed citizens, but right now I hope to have 3. So
Okay, thank
one
you.
more.
Anyone else? Is it, I'm sorry, I don't know this, but is it specifically stated in the policy somewhere what the purpose of this grant program is?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes. It's
All right, so, all right, just so we don't lose sight of that, of why these funds are even available.
And
the-
that's
the purpose
um,
of granting,
yep.
granting them, yeah.
Yep, and that's actually, so there's a section there that's taken straight from the state code, how we must use those funds and what the purpose of the funds are.
Perfect, okay. Anyone else? Great, thank you. 8.8.
The staff is seeking approval of an agreement with General Code for recodification services, online code hosting, and supplemental services. The Marion Code of Ordinances was last recodified in the year 2000. So it's been 22 years since the code has been reviewed in its entirety. 3 proposals were received and an overview of each was provided in the council packet. The review team is recommending moving forward with General Code as their system is easy to use. It's the system currently used by staff when researching codes from other communities. They have attorneys on staff. They excel at form-based codes, and staff can access analytics to see what people are searching for. General Code is also a partner of the International Code Council and offers city-specific international codes, which we have the building code, fire code, multiple others. So if the city ever wishes to purchase custom codes in the future, that would be a possibility. Is there any questions?
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, Rachel, once we move to this step, which I think is a good step for all of the citizens and anybody else doing research, how does that keep updated thereafter? Is there an annual fee that we pay them, that they keep it updated, or can we do that in-house?
That they update that, it would be similar to how it's handled now, where we do it now quarterly, but we send them our ordinances as they are approved and they're
Okay.
updated. I think we could do real time. So the update or the online code shows the ordinances that have been approved since the last formal update.
So there'll be an annual ongoing expense
Yeah, it's
to some extent.
per page that's updated.
Okay.
That's how the fee is
All right,
determined.
thanks.
Go ahead, Grant, and then Colette.
So this is a predictable question that I have. Is this going to be hosted as a system with our own, within our own IT environment, or is it separately hosted? And have we examined the security provisions that are wrapped around the site?
I believe it's hosted, it's cloud-based, so it's not within our networks and system. I'm not sure of the security, if there would be any security issues.
I haven't reviewed it, so I don't know.
My concern is just understanding the provisioning around this cloud-based service and to make sure that it has sufficient resiliency to avoid any kind of defacement that could happen by a malactor. So if that can be just something that we generally understand, I think that's an important feature for any time we move to the cloud. One last comment. I'm all in favor of this being done for end user reasons, as well as be able to help us manage our library of code. So I think this is a great effort.
Go ahead, Colette.
Just a couple of questions regarding the cost again, and I'm with Grant and Steve, right? Another technical solution for some efficiencies, which is great. So it looks like it's about $22,000. First question is that an annual cost? And then regarding the $18 per page, what is the more, I think what's just the overall annual cost that you all are expecting with this particular product?
So the 21,954 is a one-time cost, and that's just for the recodification. And then there is an annual cost. I believe it was under $2,000, which is typical to what we pay now with our current provider.
Plus the $18 per page?
That is included in the
Oh, it
annual
is.
cost. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, public services, B1.
Yes, Your Honor and Counsel. On Thursday, we'll have a public hearing and a resolution to award the demolition package for the new public services facility. Today, about 2 hours ago, we had 4 qualified bids. There were 6 bidders total, 4 qualified bids. Schrader Excavating out of Walford, Iowa is going to be the recommended bidder. They actually put the bid in for a $100 credit for the city of Marion. So on Thursday, we'll have the formal recommendation for city council consideration. Start date for the project is April 1st. We gave them 60 working days. However, every indication during the pre-bid is that it should be a fairly quick project. So a couple of weeks, we should have that down.
Questions? So with the $100 credit, just for purposes of everyone's understanding.
Yeah, so the way that's calculated is that there's enough valuation in the scrap metal.
Okay.
To where they felt that there's enough there to cover not only their costs, make a profit, but also give a credit back to the city. Essentially, they wanted to get the job. As you can see there, we had a $0 bid come in. That was by Epic Construction, but Schrader thought they could be more competitive with the $100 credit.
Okay, I appreciate the explanation. Just want to make sure that was part of the record. So anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, just to clarify, you said it should be done in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, they felt that the steel should be down in a week or two.
Okay.
Depending on what they run into. Given that we're having good weather now, it should go pretty quick. The concern was whether or not we'd have a long winter. Hopefully we're not. Hopefully this is it.
Knock on wood.
But yeah, it should, in a couple of weeks, it should be down after April 1st.
Great.
Great.
Yeah, Ryan, regarding Schrader and Epic, I kind of view those as equivalent bid amounts. I guess, is there any fundamental difference between their capabilities and the schedule that they're proposing? Anything that you can share that sort of qualifies one versus the other?
Both contractors are qualified. Kara could probably touch on this. We're probably going to recommend awarding the most advantageous bid to the city. Since there is a $100 difference, we would probably recommend that. Schrader has every capability to do this. Epic, Schrader is also a local company out of Walford. Epic, I believe, is out of Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken. So they would be a local presence.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Ryan. Under engineering, E1 is marked.
Yes, Your Honor. So Thursday, we will have a public hearing for the 2022 pavement patching project. There's 4 streets on different sections that we're doing. The low bid came in from Eastern Iowa Excavating at $727,723.30, just about 95% of the engineer's estimate. It has a late start date of 8/1 of 22 with 40 working days and $300 or $500 per day in liquidated damages. And we are recommending proceeding with Eastern Iowa. There should be a detailed bid package in your packet.
Questions? Pretty straightforward. Okay. E3,
So similarly, E3, we got bids for the Lau Park roadway overlay project. So this is our typical mill, the top 2 layers and 2 inches and put it back down. We received 1 bid from LL Pelling, came in at 99.24% of the engineer's estimate, $147,277.50. There's certain weekends that we're allowing them to work due to the park's schedule of events that's out there. So those are the dates up on the PowerPoint. They get 15 working days to complete the project, and there's $300 per day in liquidated damages for this project, and we are recommending approval to LL Pelling.
questions? Go ahead.
This is probably in our packet. I'm pulling this up. So when work shall only occur, does that weekends as well, or? I'm thinking of all of the events in the park, in the buildings, graduation parties, et cetera.
Yeah, so these are the dates that the Parks Department gave us because we have to do it at some point. So there will be some, so it's only Mondays through Fridays, but there will be some weeks that you won't be able to get in there,
During the week,
Monday through Friday.
but they should be able to park there on the weekend if people have events happening on that.
Yeah, I mean, they might be parked on a milled surface or something like that, so it may not be ideal similarly to when we do a street. So it's going to be under construction, but yes. So there won't be stall lines, there won't be.
And I can add to that, Mike. We've also worked with Jacob in the bidding of this, that there will be at least one-way traffic throughout the entirety of the project. They're thinking, they're estimating 2 to 3 days to start and finish this project. But during that whole time, there will be one-way traffic in and out. So there will be flaggers at both ends of the driveway.
Okay, super, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, the next 2 items I will have the Mayor Pro Tem handle.
E5, is that where we're at?
Yes.
Yep. So this is just approving the contract for the Indian Creek Trail. So we had the public hearing at the previous council meeting. This has a late start of the 21st of this month. That way the trees get down before the Indiana bat deadline. There's 140 working days, liquidated damages of $1,000 per day. And then just of a matter of clarification, typically the mayor signs the contract after we approve it by resolution. However, this is through the DOT digital Doc Express system. So we got Ryan Waller all approved to do that, and then he decided to go on vacation. So I am set up to digitally sign it. So we will still have the city council resolution approving that the mayor will sign, but I will actually go in and click the button that says that the city approved it. Just the verification process and the system that they have for that is not easily set up. So just wanted to make sure council is aware of that. So there's a separate whereas in there stating that I have that power.
Gotcha. Any questions? So the early start date being in a couple weeks or in a week, because of the trees, are they probably more likely just going to go in, take out the trees and then come back?
Likely because they don't want to get too much work going. They have to order the bridges and they have to be manufactured. They won't do that until the contract's signed. The contracts won't be signed until Thursday. So.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. E6 then.
So E6 is our annual HMA program. So again, the streets are up on the PowerPoint. It is 25,000 over the budget, but we will watch it as we do the streets. We will modify if we have to shorten a street or take a street out as we continue through the project. It has a completion date of 9/30 of 22 and liquidated damages of $300 per day.
Any questions? All right, E7, is that back to you?
Yep.
Okay.
Seven.
So E7 is our typical manhole project. So this is where we go in, we take an existing brick manhole that has a lot of I&I issues and completely remove the manhole. These are typically in the middle of the street and replace it with a new concrete manhole that's sealed. So there's 7 manholes that we're completely removing and replacing. We have liquidated damages of $300 per day with 30 working days and a start date of 8/8 of 22. So when this is approved on Thursday, Friday, we will release the plans to then have the bidders start putting together their bids.
Questions? All right, E8.
So E8 is similar. However, there are some manholes that might be in an alley or somewhere where it's not conducive to actually remove the existing brick manhole. So the picture on the left actually shows an existing brick manhole that we're talking about. And this is a new process where we actually rehab the existing manhole, where basically there's a form wall that's put on the inside of the manhole and concrete poured on the inside. So that's basically a liner for the manhole. So there's 8 manholes that we're proposing to do with this new process. Des Moines has done a good job of getting bidders in this. So this is kind of a new trial for us for those manholes that are hard to get to with equipment. So we're gonna bid it and see how it comes in. If we get good bid numbers, then we'll continue to do this as an alternate between the 2 processes. But we've had several bidders that have asked us to do this type of project instead of our remove and replace process. So these we're putting in those more challenging areas where it might be hard to get that piece of equipment in someone's backyard, or there might be trees or just something that makes it difficult to do.
Okay, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, Mike, in this view, would the original brick for the manhole remain in place?
It would.
Oh, and so it is really truly a liner.
Mhm.
Okay.
So the big thing on that is actually making sure that the opening is big enough so that when we line it, public service can still maintain that structure and it doesn't get too tight that confined spaces and they can still use their apparatus to get down it.
Do they have to top point the brick or anything like that, or just put a
Nope.
liner in there and just, so they don't have to mess with the brick at all?
So it's kind of like the brick is still there, but it's the new concrete thick. It's 4 or 6 inches thick. And so that basically becomes the manhole. So that outside is basically like a form wall that's just there. So if it falls apart, the new concrete inside of it is basically the new structure. And that brick just serves as an extra barrier.
And it should be less expensive to do this.
That's why we think we can get 8 done instead of 7 for less money. But again, we're gonna see how the bids come in.
Sure. Interesting. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, E9, Mike.
So E9 is a traffic report for a speed study that was done on the new section of 6th Avenue. So that being old railroad right of way, there actually was no ordinance establishing said speed limit. So if the PD was to go out there today and write speed limit tickets, technically the speed limit is 25 unless otherwise ordained. So we've gone in and actually done a speed study so that the signs that are out there match the ordinance so that we're not writing bad tickets. So this will be the first of 3 readings. So this is the receive and file the TAC report, and E10 would be the actual first reading of the speed limit ordinance.
Okay, questions? Makes sense. Okay, E10.
So E10 is related to
Oh,
E9,
sorry.
it's the actual
E11.
resolution setting it.
E11.
So 11 and 12, I'll talk about at the same time. One is the permanent sanitary sewer easement and one is the temporary easement for construction. This is the last easements that we need for the Indian Creek trunk sewer. So this is the Grant Riley property. So there's technically 3 trusts that all own this property that they will get the money all divided between them. But this is the very southwesterly corner of Marion. Across the Indian Creek would be the Mount Calvary Cemetery. This is the property that has the Riley Grant, Frank Lloyd Wright house on it.
Questions? Okay. No questions. E12.
So E12 is just the temporary construction easement for the same property.
Okay. Any questions on that item? Okay, moving on to community development. F1 is not marked. Any questions on that item? F2.
Good afternoon. So this is for the Boulevard Apartments, the final site development plan. This was heard at the last meeting. I'll give a slight recap though. It is an apartment project containing 93 units, 4-story building with 6-unit townhomes towards the north of the property. This property did have conditions placed on it by the Planning and Zoning Commission, one being that they relocated the playground, which they have done. And it does match the approved preliminary site development plan, as well as adding that median in the driveway of the Marion Boulevard access. At the last meeting, council did ask that they go back and relook at facade materials, which they have done. The top image is showing what they've submitted as the revised elevations, whereas the bottom one is the original submittal. The original submittal mainly was hardy board, horizontal kind of lap siding, whereas the revised one is a mix of horizontal hardy board lap siding in that light blue gray color with the white being board and batten, and then some architectural panels kind of along the base of the building and then around the entrance point. So this is what the applicant has provided as far as their option from last council meeting.
Anything else?
No.
Questions? It's hard to tell with these. Any questions? Go ahead.
No, just a comment. I was able to look at those, pictures a little, it's kind of hard to see the changes from the original on this slide, from the original to the revised. But I think what they have changed has certainly accomplished what I was talking about 2 weeks ago. And that all of the hardy board siding before was always horizontal all the way along, looked way too residential. This gives you a different mix of materials, going a little more vertical in addition to the horizontal and some other materials like you talked about. So I'm satisfied with the changes that they've made.
Anyone else?
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Steve's comments. They've improved this. I suppose under some scenario, we could have, anticipated something more, but they're operating within our requirements and this becomes additionally more attractive. So I'm in favor of this.
Go ahead, Will.
Were there any changes made to the townhomes or are they staying the same?
Nope, it was just the apartment building.
Okay.
And The architectural panels are where on that?
It's the
Drawing.
light tan color on the top one, so it's just below the bottom row of windows.
Okay. so
And
it's
then
the very
around the
bottom of the
entrance, yep.
building. And then the entrance. Maybe. Other questions? Okay, thanks, Nicole. F3, is that Dave?
Yes, this is the final site development plan for Scooters drive-through kiosk located out at Easttown Crossing, 13-151. Subject property is highlighted in red. That's the corner piece right when you come in on 62nd Street, Old Cherokee Drive there. This is a 660 square foot, I think it's just a coffee kiosk. It's the model that they built off Mount Vernon Road recently, down by Ace Hardware, that area. The Planning and Zoning Commission, can I get the next slide, please? Yeah, thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this last, I guess a week and a half ago now, and they did recommend approval. Just wanted to point out a couple items on the site, and some slight modifications between P and Z late and this meeting. So the site plan's a little different, but not much. But I do want to highlight the changes. First off with I did want to highlight the drive-through space kind of highlighted there with the red arrows to kind of help show it a little bit better. This is how a drive-through is supposed to work. It's well queued. It's a double lane, single lane going into double lane, going into a single service lane. There's over, I believe, 18 spots provided. I think they could actually accommodate up to 25 spots on their own property before they even get to 62nd Street. So there really should be absolutely zero conflict with the public street. And we've seen drive-through after drive-through after drive-through fail over the last few years. So I think they're well queued, well stacked, and will meet that need. And again, I think this serves as a model for how drive-through should work on the site. The other items I wanted to point out is there is a sidewalk along 62nd Street. They will be stopping it just where the sidewalk goes into the property and not taking it down to the highway. There's no way to cross at the highway. We'd be dumping folks onto the highway and nowhere to cross to. So we're going to eliminate that leg of the sidewalk, and that is on the updated site plan. It is in your packet, but on the screen. If there's a future project, we'll work with them to get that sidewalk installed with the signals and all that, but that's probably a little ways out for that sidewalk connection. So the property does, and there is a sidewalk gap to the north, the responsibility of along that ditch area. That will be the responsibility of the developer of the entire site to connect that sidewalk when he does get a project to the north. So there will be a complete connection through that whole development and then down to the site. And again, hopefully someday across the highway, but that'll be a while, like I said. So the sidewalk does go in, so it does allow for some pedestrian connections, whether it be employees or customers on bike or walking. This is primary vehicle service kiosk. There's no pedestrian amenities beyond a bicycle rack for employee or walk-up customer. But it is provided. It is overparked, actually. It only requires 2 spots. They're providing actually 6, I believe. 4 was kind of their minimum from an industry that they looked for 2 people there, 2 people with the shift change. So they're actually overparked, which again, I'm not complaining about overparking a site by that. So it can accommodate plenty of parking as well. The elevation shown on the site, the narrow side of that building does face 100, and you're going to get those basically the same elevation on all 3 sides, that color elevation with the black, the brown panels on all 3 sides. The elevation does have a side door, not shown on this one. It came in late. It's in the exhibit with the side door instead of the door on the back side of the project that was shown. The back side of the building does face north toward the rest of the development. There'll be a building behind it eventually, so you really won't notice it. So I'm going to say the 3 really good sides of the building. All 4 sides are really nice. The 3 good sides with the architectural elements are all facing outwards toward the public streets. So very supportive of the elevations as well. Again, it's only about 660 square feet, so it's not a very big building, but they've packed a lot of style And it does meet and exceed all the design standards for the East Town Crossing, East End development standards. Again, the commission did recommend approval. And again, there's been some slight elevation changes there, but again, those are in your packet if you want to go see those in greater detail. So any questions? Sorry, I went pretty quick there.
Question, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you. It was a job well done. Obviously, putting together this site plan, a lot of thought, energy went into this as far as those drive-throughs. Those have always been a lot of concern of council and moving forward with these projects. So I just wanted to say thank you. Job well done.
Who else? Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I'll echo that. It looks good. It's nice not to have to debate up here about drive-through stacking. So fantastic having 18 available to go through there. So good job.
Oh, sorry. If you're going to address the council, please come to the microphone. Yep, that's okay. Say your name and your address, and you're welcome to say whatever you'd like. So.
Hi, I'm Chris Vatrabek. I'm with BNC Coffee, 405 Cimarron Drive in Hiawatha.
Okay.
I was just going to mention that the gentleman who designs the drive-through aspect now for all the scooters kiosks actually came from McDonald's, and he's a part of the innovation drive-through team. And I just recently listened to him speak out in Dallas, and he is absolutely fantastic. And just the ideas that he has for this project and going forward are speedy and quick. And that's the main concept with getting everyone through the drive-through, which it should be for everyone, but obviously that's not always the case.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions for staff on F3?
Your Honor, I was just going to say, I was really looking forward to more discussion about the queuing in drive-through.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. On to other department discussions. Number 1.
Yes, Your Honor, this one is me. So one duty that is a duty as other assigned per the ordinance, I am the floodplain manager as the city engineer. So the previous agreement that was discussed for the Trees Forever site. So as you can see on this, the dark pink is the floodway. The light pink is the 100-year flood elevation. And then the light dashes or the dots there is actually the 500-year. So with this, they're planning on doing improvements both on their own property and on city property. Because it's in the floodplain, they have to get a floodplain permit. As a city engineer, I authorize those. But as a matter of letting the public know, we always bring this to city council so that everyone is aware of it, so that you can say it was presented in a city council meeting if someone asks, why are they doing work in the floodway? So here they are proposing to do everything in conformance with our requirements. So on the next slide, it's kind of a blow up of kind of some of what you saw before, but the improvements that they're doing. So adding bioswales, adding vegetation. So things that will help the flooding issue, not necessarily hinder the flooding issue. So we are recommending that we approve that, but again, just bring it forward as a public matter so that everyone is aware of it.
Okay, questions? Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah. One thing I failed to say earlier this afternoon is I really think this is going to be an impressive addition to that immediate area. This looks great. Mike, the question I have about floodplain is, so their landscaping treatments will not have a net reduction of floodplain volume. Is that a way to think about it?
Yeah, so basically they still have to get their core 404 permit and all those permits, but they will be required to keep the ground level as is or lower so that it doesn't impede the water.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Other questions? Okay, next item. Okay, Brian.
Yes, so the city received a proposal recently from Michael Maloney with DA Davidson that we actually believe will add value to the city, and it will help accomplish our strategic plan initiatives, as you'll see with our rate modeling and financial tools that will help us to predict things in the future better than we have been doing. This would be a change in our current process. Right now, for our bond sales, we do competitive sales for our bonds, and this would change to a negotiated sale process where we would engage DA Davidson as our underwriters. In addition to this, DA Davidson would also provide financial consulting to us on an ongoing basis as a value-added service. It's worth to say that we would still, it's our plan to retain in our financial advisors who are independent. Sorry about that. Sorry, I'm blanking on the, it's independent public advisors. Sorry, it's same kind of, same thing as a financial advisor, same name, but so if you want to do the next slide, Charles, right? So you might ask, why change the way that we're doing our bonds? So like I said, this does support our strategic plan initiatives. We had actually budgeted in our fiscal year 23 budget $50,000 for rate modeling analysis on our 5 operating funds. And this is something that DA Davidson could help us with, in addition, as being our underwriter. So we believe that this will add resources without necessarily adding cost. And it also builds a relationship that we can rely on all year, not just on a transaction cost basis, which we would have to, that under our current model, that's what we would have to do. But this would build our relationship all year. Next slide. So just to highlight some of the research that we've done with competitive bid process versus negotiated bid process. The competitive bid process for our bonds, the pricing is for our interest rate is determined at the sale date. The underwriter provides transactional service only. For negotiated, it's negotiated in a purchase agreement. And the consulting service that DA Davidson is offering to provide is a value-added service in addition to the underwriter services. So it's also worth to note, we did receive an analysis from our financial advisor who did state that she just wanted to make us aware that there is a potential that our interest costs could go up with a negotiated sale. We did consult with our bond counsel. They do not have really any concerns around this process. It's very standard practice today to do negotiated sales, so we did not get any concerns there. The financial advisor has the fiduciary duty and they act in the best interest of the city. So as I said before, we would be retaining the services of independent public advisors. And the underwriter is subject to fair dealings with both the municipal issuers and the investors. So we've asked Michael Maloney to make a presentation and maybe provide some greater differences between the models. So I would like to now introduce Michael Maloney from DA Davidson.
Go to the last city slide too. I think that would help on timing. Hi, Michael Maloney from DA Davidson, 515 East Locust Street in Des Moines. Good to see you all today.
Welcome.
Yep. Just kind of the last slide of the actual city slides there were just from timing standpoint. And I think the key piece from that timing is really about building on what the city's done from a budgeting process right now. You know, you guys get to see in depth the financials of the city and really think about that planning with this snapshot that all cities around the state engage in each time during the winter and then finish up for the spring as you're doing now. But what we want to do is build on that momentum and then your strategic plan goal 2.2 to really have something that you can use throughout the year and prep for next budget cycle. So we're not just building on that. It's something we have in a base version that's built to date that I think will supplement for the city. You can go to the first page of my slides at this point. Thank you. Perfect. So actually 2 ahead from there. Thanks. Just a little bit about those considerations, and I appreciate Brian giving you the high level on that, but I think the key piece, looks like the order might be out of order there, but that's all right. It'd be page 6 of that group. Either way, the key is you're going to engage an underwriting firm in April as part of your bond process regardless. Typically that person shows up, provides you money, walks away. Emails is probably the only time you're actually gonna have any contact with them. There we go. Thank you. With that, you know, what you're gonna do is determine your fees and interest rate on that data sale. They walk away, you may never even have an interaction with them ever again. In our case, what we would be doing is providing service to you throughout the year. Our fees would be negotiated up front. We deliver pricing that's mutually agreed upon on the data sale. And then we've access to that consulting service throughout the year, as Brian had highlighted. Next slide, thank you. The reason this is valuable, what we're really trying to do is bring an extension of staff here. So, you know, I appreciate bonds might not be the most exciting thing in the world. This is not a volume thing from my standpoint. We can really only do the level of depth that we're talking about for the city of Marion for a handful of communities and actually do it well. So this isn't really about some type of marketing effort or things like that. Staff would tell you we've had a feeling out process over a few weeks because what this requires is frankly radical transparency from staff. Be willing to get in the weeds and really take a look at long-term strategic planning subject to the goal 2.2. It's great that the council adopted the strategic plan. That's a good piece of paper, but there needs to be mutual buy-in to make this work. For that reason, the model that we're discussing, really providing long-term focused planning with dynamic real-time analysis, not just for your budget, but for those economic development initiatives and really making sure we have sustainable growth throughout the city is something that we want to make sure we're prepared for day one. So that's what we've put together is the baseline for that, working through it because most municipal issues aren't a problem a few weeks down the road, but yesterday. And that's the proactive approach that we're taking. Next slide. Don't want to dwell too much on our setup with our firm here, but overall, I appreciate I'm a guy in a suit talking to you on a Tuesday afternoon. Just we're focused on the city's initiatives here, but I want to be clear that we have our full national platform behind us. So we're one of the most active broker dealer firms within the country. We've typically been the leader within the state as well in terms of number of negotiated underwritings, something we do regularly. We have a robust national platform here behind us as well that we can leverage as needed. Next slide, please. So a little bit of the engagement overview, and it's summarized in the memo that's in your packet today. But overall, the fees that we've provided here, we don't want to make there be too much of an issue on this, but it's lower than your historical average. Just so very clear on just the transactional basis, there's value there from the city, though that's not the focus of the engagement. Our focus is then to bring that ongoing value, as Brian mentioned throughout the year, with the type of forecasting and planning elements that we've talked about and visited with the staff. Again, the focal point of strategic plan goal 2.2 is the big picture, but working through the details of that and really getting in the weeds of the city's overall finances. A couple more slides and I'll answer your questions you got. Brian kind of highlighted this, but I just add a couple other notes on this for your context. Again, the historical concept for the city has been transactional based, and the switch here is really to a relationship based consideration. So we're trying to bring that value throughout the year, not just the bond transaction. So fees determined up front, pricing on day of sale, and obviously because we want to have a long-term relationship with you, we have a vested interest in performing well for the city's bonds. Furthermore, I just be proactive about it. It's not the 80s or 90s or even the aughts anymore. Everything's fully transparent. Differences in bond pricing, especially at the city's rating category and size, is very, very tiny. But we're going to do the best we can to provide excellent pricing for you on a regular basis because of the relationship we want to have with the city. I think the last piece I wanted to highlight is really a local participation too. Everybody loves the shop local story, but you can put it into action really with your distribution of bonds. And what that I mean is when you've done competitive sales historically, you put the bonds out, you don't know who buys them, and you don't know where they ultimately land with investors. What you can do, and what we try to prioritize, is really saying, who do you want to distribute bonds to within your community or region, and giving them preference and priority at market clearing prices. Cedar Rapids, Iowa City corridor is an excellent place for that. There's a couple dozen community banks as well as larger financial institutions, and the city can dictate where those bonds are ultimately distributed by placing that priority on local distribution. Next slide, thanks. Just a few other considerations here to wrap up. Again, this is about a long-term approach overall and aligning with the city's long-term strategic plan. Something that I wanted to just be clear about is, we expect that that extension of staff is not just lip service, but actually something where we're available at any time. So I'm a phone call away. In a lot of communities, it's just staff. Some it's the council. I don't know if that'll be the case per se here, but we want to be able to answer those questions and be able to provide those proactive responses on a timely basis for the long term for the city of Marion. So that means we need to understand what you need, what you want to do, and where we're going in the future, not just the next budget, but 5 and 10 years down the road. That's the big picture approach that we bring to bear. Brian, I don't know if there's anything else at this time, but I'd love to entertain any questions that the council or the mayor may have, and I appreciate your time and consideration today.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks for recapping what this encompasses. So the simple question that I have, and I'm looking at the historical comparison of what we've paid for underwriter fees versus, I think what's being proposed is $7 per thousand.
Yep.
That $7 per thousand proposed, that then allows access to all the additional services with no additional cost?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, the aspect of this, I think, is one of the most beneficial things for the city going forward is a longer term relationship. I mean, there's a lot of analysis that needs to be done, can be done in a probably more efficient manner. And while we have an excellent staff in the finance department, this is beyond their capabilities to do a lot of that. So either way, I think we need to have a relationship with somebody on a longer term basis to start working on that. And if we can dovetail that in with the bond issuance, I'm fine with that. Obviously, the fees is not my question or my concern of the way they're presented. So what additional comments can you give us? The piece I think about is more the interest rate.
Yep, absolutely.
So what is your experience been? Well, obviously, we don't have anything to compare it to.
Yep.
So what can you tell us to convince us that the manner and how you are going to sell those bonds will give us a rate comparable to what we would do on a competitive bid basis?
Well, I think there's two factors. Let's just talk about the competitive sale process, right? You saw the historical data from those fees. That's all that's categorized there for you. And if you think about that, people are going to be selling your bonds without knowing who they're going to ultimately put it in the pockets of: community banks, other brokers, et cetera. And with that experience, there's two schools of thought. One, you'll notice some real low fees on there, right? In that case, the interest rates were probably higher than where the market was. There's also, and not as dramatically for you as some, we've seen fees, $22.50 is one we've seen on the high end before, where the rates are really low, but they're willing to lose some money in distributing the bonds. We're trying to give you a fair rate, and we're going to do a fair price on the bonds. I will tell you that the transparency and just the general liquidity of the markets these days, there are not the gaps. There's real-time data that's publicly available at no cost to anybody now. With that and the city's credit rating, there's not a real big difference or much change in terms of your best bid and your second best bid. And the thing that we can bring to bear is we're not pricing on one day. That's the day you get the paperwork from us, but we're going to have time over a week or two to price the bonds and really work to put that together, which means we're going to reduce the risk to ourselves and get a very good final book of business. Doesn't mean we'll have all the bonds sold before that day. We have to take some of that risk, but at the same time, we're going to be able to work and find that price beforehand to make sure that the city gets a great rate.
So if we're going to be issuing bonds, you know ahead of time that these bonds are going to be coming out in another month or two.
Yep.
You're able to talk to your marketplace, let them know who's in and find out who's interested.
Yep.
And then also, I assume there's enough competitive bid information out there with comparable ratings
Yep.
for this kind of a placement that you're gonna know what that range should be. So if the range should be, say, 230.
Yep.
And somebody comes at you and say, yeah, I'll give you 215, and the market's 230, are you gonna say, I'll pass on that?
We're always
Because it
trying to
should
build,
be,
we're always trying to build the best set of bonds for the city.
All right.
So where we'll take risk is if you're selling bonds 1 through 20 years, right?
Right.
And we've got people 1 through 6, we got people 10 through 20, and it just doesn't fit in 6 through 10. That's our obligation to make that go because we've got the full book of business built otherwise. So we're there to really stabilize that. But Mr. Jensen, to your point in terms of the distribution, the thing I would add is it's not theoretical on where bonds would be. So we're the #1 firm in the state, but we're 5th nationally in number of issues. Did over 450 issues last year. So that means we're in the market multiple times per week. It's not just that we see other people doing it, we're selling bonds to those investors. So we've got a really good idea where the market's going to be.
I think the one aspect I really like on a going forward basis is establishing this relationship for a number of years and having that company to go to in these situations and working with our analysis with our TIF.
Yep.
And working with the bond placements as well. So I like it going forward.
I appreciate that. And I just want to say I've been impressed with staff. You know, I was serious about radical transparency. It's not every community that's going to buy into that level with staff wanting to do things with a long-term perspective because everything's got to be on the table. And I think staff has seen that there's mutual benefit there. And that's what I'm excited to work with. So thank you.
I just wanted to add one thing there. Our financial advisor is also online, Tiana Pooler. So if you did have any questions for her, just so like I said before, it's still our intention to retain her services. So if you did have any questions for her also, and she'll also be here on Thursday.
Randy?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you again for your presentation as well as the rest of the council members have been repeating, but this is my background as well too as finance. So it's very exciting for me to see that we're having this platform put into place. We've got a very capable finance department, but it's always nice to have this arm's length reach out to a partnership. This is going to help us in addressing a lot of our calls in the future. Interest sensitive, products that are going to be moving. We're going to see a change in the markets here soon. We already are started to see that. And so by having these relationships, it's going to allow us to position ourselves in a more favorable manner as we move forward. So again, this is just another tool in our bag that we've been needing for a while. I've been super excited working with Leanne and her department in getting this ramped up to where we're at today. So super excited to see. And I'm also very excited to see that we're going to have that capability if we wanted local interest in purchasing our bonds. Most of our bonds have all gone national. And I believe the last issue that we put out there, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they pretty much all went to Minnesota. And we don't have any of that opportunity here. And this is going to give some people to that chance to buy some equity in our community. So that's super exciting for me to see our municipality bonds within people's portfolios, corporates portfolios. So anyway, kudos to you, the finance department and staff that got us to this level. So thank you for everyone.
Anyone else? Well, just a question for staff, just out of curiosity. So I'm sure, no doubt about the qualifications of DA Davidson, but how did we land on this relationship, or was this just have we had experience with each other before, or?
So our city manager, Ryan Waller, has also worked with DA Davidson in the past, and Michael Maloney.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
So what's to follow from this item, Brian?
So if you have any additional questions, then you can let us know for Thursday, but it would be our intent to put this on the agenda to have this agreement approved.
Thursday?
Yes.
All right, one final item under discussion this afternoon is outdoor sidewalk cafe zone. Dave?
Okay, I think you should have received with the packet, you should have received, not just a staff report, but a design guidelines manual, an application, and ordinance. They were very much a working copy. There was a lot of staff notes in there. I guess you wanted to just see how we're thinking through things. So yeah, we know the spelling errors. I know the spelling errors. I wouldn't blame Kara or anybody else for having spelling errors, but they're a working document. We're getting this working document to you now because the weather is really getting nice fast. So it's not polished, but we wanted you to have it ahead of time. So bear with me on all those little notes and whatnot in there. All right, this really came around. Obviously, we spent a great deal of time and money on our streetscape and widening the sidewalk. And obviously, we wanted to create the opportunity for sidewalk cafes. They've always been allowed up there, but there's really been kind of a hodgepodge effort to get them approved. Hold harmlesses, what do they look like? We've had some really good ones. We've had ones that aren't as nice. So we're trying to create a process that would allow an approval process that makes it easier. There's some design guidelines, there's some recommendations, and there's some prohibited items as well. So I'm going to really divide this presentation into 3 parts: application process, barriers, and fixtures and furniture. And I'll try to be pretty quick. Can I get the next slide, Terrell, please? Okay, the general area we'll be looking at is highlighted in red. This corresponds with the U1 and U2 zoning districts, which is the uptown core, and then the corridor itself, as we go from basically roundabout 7th Street roundabout to about the 15th, 17th Street roundabout there. So that's the area. The immediate areas of impact for this would be the blue highlighted areas. Those have sidewalks today that could or will, in the short term, be able to accommodate a sidewalk cafe. There's enough depth to make it worthwhile. So there's a lot of this district that could not accommodate it today, but as projects happen, it may. So we're trying to plan a little bit ahead. So this ordinance will only affect, and these guidelines will only affect that area in red. Everywhere else in town should be able to accommodate a cafe on their own private property, and a 5-foot sidewalk is not going to cut it anywhere else. This will probably work really well up into the neighborhood at Indian Creek, up north someday when that does develop. So we've already got it done. Next slide, please. This is kind of a technical drawing, I know, but if you get a chance between now and when you get this ordinance in front of you here in a month or so, if you're uptown, walking uptown, you want to see, well, what does that mean? What does this look like for a space? There's a saw cut out there, basically right in the middle of the sidewalk, can't miss it. From the building facade to that saw cut, that'll basically be the areas that the businesses will have to operate a sidewalk cafe. So it's about 8 to 9 feet for the most part along 7th Avenue and 10th Street that they'll be allowed to operate. So I wanted to give you guys an idea of what that looks like in terms of space. So if you're out there walking, please observe that. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Go back one. So the first part is the application, standard application. I'm not going to bore you with the details on that. Scaled site plan. We get owner information, and we get, more importantly, we get the insurance information. They're obviously using our sidewalks. We're going to make sure they have correctly insured and everything like that. We have a good contact, so we know going forward, what's being proposed. This will require a scaled site plan. Basically, they'll be able to use our streetscape plan and draw it in. And then just what are you going to put out there? Products, whether it be tables, chairs, host station, menu board. This is our property, so we want to make sure it's high quality equipment. Question?
We have a question.
When you said 8 to 9 feet, is that the same in front of Broad Main, or is that going to be different with that new building going in?
I'd have to check the dimension. I'll verify that. And I'll shoot you that answer. So that basic application. Next slide now. Second part, and probably the most noticeable one, would be the barriers. These are required anytime there's a sidewalk cafe into the public sidewalk. A couple of aspects of them: they have to be sectional, meaning small enough to move. I lost my space, my notes. Sectional fencing. Right now, we are proposing rope and chain. I think there's been some concerns with that, just the way it looks. We're also allowing for, it has to be freestanding, so it cannot be mounted into the city sidewalk unless it's part of a city project. We did that with Tomaso's, and there may be an opportunity for that in front of Zoe's and the Masonic Lodge, as if you've noticed, the grade's pretty steep there, so we may have to bench it down a little bit. And if we bench it, we create that little bit of a step that would need a barrier. So we would provide basically the ability to do that in those situations to be required. Work with the business owners for them to install their fencing at that time. So that might be a required when it could be mounted into the sidewalk. Why we don't want it mounted in the sidewalk is you get a bolt pattern. It works for the first 5 years. Next guy comes in, it's got different fencing, different bolt pattern. We're just keep putting stuff into our sidewalks. It's cracks. It just doesn't look good. So we want to keep them freestanding. We would allow planter boxes as an option. So there's a lot, we don't want to necessarily create a real monotonous look to we don't want everybody to be the same. Everybody has a little unique flair to the business or what they sell or what they do. So we want to allow the flexibility, but we also want to make sure that they are a high quality barrier. It's not your cinder blocks with the wooden garden edging in it. It's not your pallets. It's high quality, durable, commercial type barriers. Prohibited type of fencing. Unfortunately, you can't game every scenario, but we wouldn't allow vinyl banners to be used as fencing. We wouldn't be allowed chain link. Unstained or unpainted wood would not be allowed. So it's got to be well-maintained, fairly permanent type of material, heavy and commercial. Of course, there would not be signs allowed on those signs allowed on the barriers unless it's a sign that's incorporated into the barrier. Whether it be some scroll work or something like that. It couldn't be a temporary banner brought to you by Pepsi, tapped onto the side of the barrier. Has to be incorporated into it. Then we go into obviously the standards, the guidelines cover height. There's some spacing material so you can't pass a beer through the fence. You can probably go over, but you can't go through it. And that's all laid out in the state code. So if they do serve alcohol, that's something that they have to design with their barrier to meet all the alcohol service requirements. Next slide, please. Again, I'm not going to go into great detail about furniture and fixtures. It's all in the document you can read. It regulates everything from tables and chairs, umbrellas, signages. We want to encourage, we're not going to require small square tables, but a small square table is much better than a large round table in terms of use, how you can move them around. So we're going to give them a lot of, hey, here's some options, and here's why it's a good option. These tables will obviously be outdoor commercial grade type tables. We're not going to allow the plastic lawn chair ones. Trying to keep the colors, not saying muted, but trying to keep them within. We don't want to see hot pink ones out there. Trying to keep them fairly muted earth tones or something corresponding to the business. Umbrellas, the same thing. Trying to keep them reasonable sized. Again, not permitting the Hawkeye one with the name of the business or the Budweiser one with the name of the business. We want to keep the signage limited to just the name of the business. Again, uniform colors. Signage, already kind of talked about it, will not be allowed unless it's incorporated into the barrier or into the furniture itself. Prohibited items, buffet and busing services, plastic furniture. I've got an email off to the fire marshal to see what sort of, I say fire, but what sort of heating elements might be allowed on a city sidewalk or at the table itself. So all that'll be incorporated in here as well. Last slide. Next steps, again, we're going to keep finalizing this draft, the application, the ordinance. It'll go to Planning and Zoning Commission in April, Uptown Main Street and the Historic Preservation Commission all in April. And then back to you guys for hopefully final review and approval, probably in April. It'll be adopted a couple different ways. It'll be amended into the zoning ordinance. And then there'll be to allow it, accessory to a business. And then it will be an ordinance on the sidewalk cafes itself. And then by resolution, we'll actually adopt design guidelines. And this obviously can be handed out to everybody uptown, lays out the do's, the don'ts, the recommendations. And then if there are changes or amendments, we're just amending this by resolution, not the whole ordinance itself. So it should be a little bit more easy to amend and a little more adaptable as we get into it, maybe a year or two. There are some, I don't want to use the word penalties, but with the application, it'd be a yearly process, so we can, hey, you had poor, you didn't maintain your fire circulation, you didn't maintain you had planter boxes, but it became a cigarette ashtray, thank you. There's no ashtrays anymore, I kind of forgot the word. It doesn't become the ashtray for the patio or the uptown. So there are some, hey, we're not gonna renew it next year because or we'll renew it one more year, but you've got to meet these new standards to keep them in place. Okay, now the big questions are hours or operation. We're looking at from being prohibited between December 1st and March 1st. That's the area it's not allowed to be in. But if we have that really nice day or that special event, you can bring out your patio, you can bring out your barriers set up for that day, but you have to take it down and put it back in at night. The only reason we say that is you could have that gorgeous 60-degree day in December and then it's snowing the next day. So we want to give all the businesses, hey, you can really operate year round on a patio, but you've got to, during this period of time, these winter months, you've got to put it away every night. A little bit of a burden, but we think the nice days are few and far between. And, for a special event or that really nice day or two, we want to make sure we allow it, but we want to make sure that parks are, doing the sidewalk maintenance is getting out there and not having to compete with all this furniture that may be out there. So hours of operation, 2 to 6 a.m. would be prohibited. So it allows for restaurants and bars, if they do stay open until 2, to operate. 6 a.m. If a coffee shop or something like that wants to operate, they can sure have folks out there drinking coffee at 6 in the morning. So yeah, next steps, we're going to move pretty rapidly on this. Tonight, again, we're just kind of looking for any quick little feedback you may have, any heartburn on any areas you like, any areas you'd like to refocus on. But we're moving pretty rapidly because I'm losing the season, or I'm already about a month behind, unfortunately, with the weather changing.
Go ahead, Randy.
Thank you, Dave, and I appreciate all the information on this. I have visited with a couple of other cities. Was there any discussion or consideration with going to a standardized barrier just for uniformity? The cities that I've visited with, they've said that they started out with something what you're talking about, and then they finally determined it was kind of a mess because the adjoining properties, the barriers weren't connecting properly. The bolt patterns were constantly changing. Just a general question, the 2 cities that I talked to, they decided to go with a wrought iron because they could see what was going on, from a policing standpoint. There was no hindrances with, blocked areas in the seating and stuff like that. Just a general question on that. And then the second question I had was what area of our city then would actually police that process? I mean, if we did have that beautiful day and the owners chose not to take those barriers down that night and we have a snowfall and now we got snow crews trying to clean up the next day, does that fall under building permits, et cetera, et cetera? Those are my only 2 questions. Thanks.
Okay. Starting off with barriers, yes, we looked at a uniform one, but then a lot of the communities were like, it's you're kind of you're mauling the main street, kind of like you all have that same color awnings or same style of awnings. It got very mall-like. So they wanted to allow individuals to reflect your business with different types of barriers. That was the one comment that kept coming up, was like incompatibility. But that's just, hopefully we have a small enough area. Hopefully we can all work together. Strong Main Street, I think, can help us as well, kind of coordinate those. So I think we're recommending trying this. And if we have to massage it after year 2, it'll be really easy to do that. But second question, process, unfortunately, I probably involved in the planning department to go out there and, hey, you gotta bring it in at night with the hold harmless, or with by holding us harmless on everything. If our equipment does damage it, it is on them. We're not going to be responsible for any damages caused to it by our equipment, but unfortunately, be planning, just kind of reminding them of their obligations. And if they repeated failure to do that when they come up for any renewal, that's something we'll have to address with the renewal process.
Yeah, I think the annual renewal helps the
Annual renewal,
compliance. Randy, are you willing to share what cities you talked to, or just curious?
Yeah, they were in the suburbs of the Madison, Wisconsin area.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Sarah?
Thank you for this. I think we've all traveled and looked around and seen how vibrant in downtown or uptown looks with these types of opportunities. And we've talked about it back for quite a while, and I'm excited to see some structure put around it. My first question is, have the uptown district, Brook, et cetera, those that are involved, have they had any input, and have they been kind of walking alongside us on this?
Yes, they've been to both of our meetings or 3 meetings, and the design committee will be reviewing this in April. They've already had they already pretty much got the presentation you got today, they got last week. So I got their comments already. Their biggest thing is just, I think the code says no artificial flowers. They're kind of saying, well, you can do artificial really well. Yeah. And then they don't like the rope and chains is their biggest concerns.
The rope
Everything
and
else-
chains?
Rope and chain
Oh, yeah, the-
barriers they had little concerns about, but they basically been involved in the entire process. I think they got most of their membership working toward this as well. So I think that's a few minor changes from now. I think they'll be 100% on board with it though.
Perfect. And then this just, when you mentioned the ashtray thing, I just have to clarify for my own knowledge. So could somebody be smoking in one of these sidewalk cafe areas? Or if it's considered part of
I
more
think
of a
it's,
bar?
I'll let Kara address that. She can probably do it better than I can.
Yes, we actually put in the ordinance that they cannot,
Okay.
and that's in conformance with the state code. Just so that council is aware, for those types of provisions, the smoking and some of the other rules like the hours, things like that, we actually use the same rules that we have for the Artway, so that it would match what we have for the Artway.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Sorry, thanks.
Is that it, Sarah? Or-
That is it.
Will?
So as far as when an application is brought forward, so it'll be your department that'll be making the approval of the material and things like that, correct?
Of the material, yes.
Yes, and so approving what they want to do, the plans.
Correct.
So if is there a committee, or if somebody wants to do something and you guys say no, is there a committee it goes to for approval? Like, I can never think of the name of
The zoning
committee.
board.
Thank you. That type of thing, or is it?
No, the zoning board can only hear like bulk. If they want to say, well, you said we got 8 feet, we want to go out 9 feet. That's a bulk standard. That's something that the zoning board. So if they want to say, hey, this material is not listed in here, we'll look at the material, make a staff determination. If it's, it's comparable, it's not. If it's not, then it's okay, this is the appeal is to the zoning official, Tom. And then we're still working, that's actually a question in the application is who gets the final say? Is it city manager or is it city council? We're still trying to work on that final language, so I can't answer that question.
And then when it was brought up, like if they don't take their stuff in between December 1st, and March 1st, is there going to be a fee schedule at all, or just looking at it to maybe not get their license renewed? Or
It's just, it's the threat of not getting renewal for non-compliance, and I don't think we're gonna have that problem. I mean, we might have a seasonally couple good days, and it's just play it by ear and try to constantly remind them of the rules. So
yeah,
I don't see any fees or any fines. It's just a matter of you risk your renewal.
To clarify, I think we do have a provision in
Oh, do
there
we?
that
In the
it's
ordinance
a
itself?
municipal infraction if they don't follow the rules.
Okay.
I'm always wanting it to be a municipal infraction, just in case.
Yeah, that was my thought was, well, if it's spring and someone's already not following any of the rules and they're going to get a whole year to do whatever they want, and there's no penalty until they have to renew. So I guess if there's some municipal, and that'll be on.
That's it within the ordinance, and we'll plug that into the design guidelines as a reminder. This is here if you can't.
Okay.
You can also have your license revoked.
You can. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Grant?
Is there anything in the standards for sidewalk design that make assumptions about pedestrian foot traffic flow and capacity that these would be running in conflict with?
Yeah, you'll have the city portion, that's the 6 foot, that's sacred, can't be touched. That's the ADA access. Then once you get internal, occupancy is set, it's an extension of the building essentially, and the building code, the building department sets the occupancy essentially of that patio based on size, number of tables, et cetera. So then there's capacity set within that cafe area.
Okay.
And then there's a minimum, I think it's 36 inches. You have to maintain for ADA requirements within the cafe zone itself. So you're really only gonna get one row in 8 or 9 feet, you're only gonna get really one row of tables. And then with an ADA act or with an ADA walkway through the cafe.
So in the area that was noted in the uptown where this would be permissible, it's then just on the basis of the physical structure of the sidewalk and building relative to the curb line, you could end up having either greater opportunity or less opportunity to even do this.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Anyone else? Steve, Colette?
Your Honor,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yes,
Can
go
I have
ahead.
one more question?
Yeah,
This is for you, Kara. And I know we've talked about this in the past, and I'm just trying to recollect. Do we know if our certificates of insurance will actually, I know some carriers they need to list that sidewalk as a second location on the general liability portion to the policy because it's no longer in the footprint of the property itself. I'm just trying to determine in my mind if a certificate of insurance is actually extending liability to that sidewalk premises, because in my mind, that's a separate rating category because it's an exterior versus interior. I just don't know if do we have any knowledge or any more insight on that?
I don't know that we have a ton as far as any establishment that doesn't serve alcohol, but if they do serve alcohol, then that's addressed in their liquor license. If they want to be able to serve in an outdoor seating area, that has to be covered. So that would be something they would have to address with their insurance carrier, but I can look into that a little bit more before we bring this back.
Okay, I was going to check into the ISO ratings as well too to see. I just want to make sure that if we're collecting certificates, that we're doing our due diligence to let them know and advise them that this is a secondary location that needs to be noted on your policy before we have a liability out there on the sidewalk and we're involved in something that we didn't have any knowledge of. So just a little clarification, but I can talk to you a little bit more about that later. Thank you.
That's why it's good to have an insurance guy on.
It's good and bad. Yeah.
Things we don't think about. Okay, any other questions? Okay, is that good, Dave?
Yes.
You good?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. The last item on our agenda is a closed session.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the closed session regarding litigation as permitted under section 21.51C of the Code of Iowa, and this will be for 2 separate measures.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn the closed session regarding litigation as permitted under section 21.51C of the Code of Iowa. May we have the legal counsel's statement, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have reviewed the proposed subject matter for the closed sessions and find the same to be appropriate under Iowa Code section 21.51C.
Okay, any discussion before we vote? Roll call, please.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Jensen,
Yes.
Ms. Atkins,
Yes.
Mayor Awasli,
Yes?
Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Menzer,
Yes.
Mr. Sterned.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We're adjourned to closed session and good work session. Thank you everyone for joining.